Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has given us unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure or admire an old one. What will we find today? Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
What is one thing that you've done in your life that took the most faith to do? Maybe you look back and think, wow, that took some guts. What a leap of faith. My one thing was moving to New Orleans to go to seminary. I had no job, very little money, and I didn't know anyone within a 500-mile radius of the place. The first night there, I had to spend the night in my U-Haul. All that because I felt God had called me there. But all that pales in comparison to the faith that it took Abraham to follow through with what God had called him to do in Genesis 22. I imagine after Abraham spent 3 very restless, possibly sleepless nights, and all that travel, then climbing up a mountain, he would be spiritually, emotionally, and physically exhausted by the time they arrived on the flat top of Mount Moriah. But he got to work building the altar. Keep in mind, this guy was something like 125 years old, and Isaac wasn't a little kid. He was a full-grown man of about 25. He could have taken on his dad pretty easily, but he didn't even try. Isaac willingly, through trust in his father, obedience to his father, allowed Abraham to bind him and lay him on the altar. We admire Jesus for obeying his father unto death, but at least Jesus knew his death would bring freedom and salvation to everyone who would believe. Isaac didn't have any idea of what God's purposes were in this. He fully expected that knife to come plunging down into his heart, just as Abraham fully expected to kill his son as God had told him to. Can you imagine the faith it took? Faith of both Abraham and Isaac for this scene to occur. Abraham, through tears, raised the knife, but he suddenly heard his name called again, just as the Lord had called Abraham before. But this time he called his name twice. Again, Abraham, knife raised, answered, "Here am I." In other words, I'm right here where you told me to be. The angel of the Lord, whom we usually see as Jesus, told him, "Do not lay your hand on the lad, or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." He declared Abraham had passed the test with an A+. He had shown not only his faith and trust in God, but also his fear of God and love for God. Now, not only God knew it, but Abraham also knew that God was first place in his life. I heard a preacher say once, it's not that God is in first place and you're second and third place or giving him a run for his money, but that God is so far in first place that he doesn't have any competition at all. That was certainly true in Abraham's life. Is God first place in your life? How do you know? What's in the way of him being in first place?
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. We'd love to hear the treasures God has given you through His Word. You can listen to other episodes on our website, which you can find in the description below. Thank you for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.